From Tally to Cali.
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up! Wake up! Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! What's up, everybody? It's Wake Up Warchant, proudly presented by Zaxby's. Indescribably good. Warchant.com, it's your ultimate Seminole sports source. That's who employs myself and Corey Clark. Use the promo code Warchant30 if you're not already a member. Get you 30 free days of access. Try it. You'll like it. Again, can't promise you'll stay forever. I think you will. Lots of good stuff going on over on the site. Namely, a little bit of hot topic debate going on with the NIL, not to be confused with NLI, name, image, and likeness, which I'm sure Corey and I will debate here shortly. It's part of the question on the Renegade Express. Lots of stuff going on the website, I assure you. Corey, you though, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm hanging there. Still eating, still breathing, still living.
Okay. It's May 1st, which I can't believe it. I feel like March was the longest year of my life. And conversely, I feel like April kind of zipped by. I don't know if it's just relative to March or we're here. It's May, bro. Everything's going to change now.
We did it. Hopefully we'll be back to, well, we're not going to be back to normal anytime soon, but we can go visit some restaurants and eat a socially acceptable distance apart. Sounds like the state's opening back up a little bit again. The whole South is opening back up again. Let's hope the sun, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. Let's hope the sun and the heat and the humidity combat this thing and we can have a nice summer, Aslan. Spring was terrible. Worst spring of any of our lives, but hopefully we can have a nice summer.
How do you think people will react if they kind of get, in your personal bubble kind of space and you kind of give them a look? I feel like a lot of people aren't going to respect the 6-foot rule. That kind of gives me the willies. Not because of the germs, but I just feel like it's going to be the new road rage. Is going to be like distance rage.
Well, I just told you I'm going to have my Bane mask on.
Okay.
So I'll be fine. And hopefully it'll come with one of those cool voice control things too where I sound like them. Nice. I feel like I look like Bane. If you gave me that mask and put it on me, I feel like I would look like Bane. Don't you think that?
There's your Halloween costume. If there's a Halloween.
Well, it's not my Halloween costume. It's just it's going to be my what I wear going out in public now.
Okay. Yeah, so people, if you see me out, please don't come within 6 feet of me. I don't care what happens. Just it's going to be a while. Just don't get close to me. Although I want to hug you next time I see you, Corey.
Don't. And also, if you feel, heck, for all we know, this all started with you going to Bali.
Whatever.
Where'd you go? Didn't you go to Bali?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. But if you do see us out, be sure to say hey, but just don't go out if you're sick. But when we say hey, that we're not going to do bro hugs or anything.
Yeah. What's the farthest? I don't want to get you in trouble. What's the farthest you've drove in the last 2 months?
Just to Tallahassee and back.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Man,
so that's it.
The other day I drove, all I do is I drive to the park and then I come back and the park is like less than a mile from my house. I think I drove to the Target by campus. So that was like a legitimate 2.5 mile trek. Felt kind of weird. Didn't remember what I was doing. Really rusty, Kind of nervous about this whole life thing once I have to leave my cocoon, but we'll make do. Next week, looking ahead, Warchant.com, and here on Wake Up Warchant, we'll be back with our usual 3-day spread that we're doing. We'll go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday and Friday, Corey and I will do our thing. You guys will do your thing with the questions on the Renegade Express. Wednesday will be another War Chat. You want to let the cat out the bag on that one? Corey, who's going to be the special guest? What game you guys are going to do? Or do you want to?
Yeah. I don't know why we feel like we need to hide these things. We should probably promote them. It's the 2003 Florida game. I feel like most people listening to this will remember that game. And it's PK Sam joined us for about 30, 35 minutes to talk about that game. Talk about that season. Talk about Chris Ricks, Crefonzo Thorpe, Leon Washington, the whole deal.
It's caught. Touchdown. PK
Sam. Yeah. Can you? I know you edit those things. Can you edit that into it?
I listened to it, and it's the whole thing like when the legend is better than the truth, print the legend.
Right.
So I'm going to do that because I did edit it, and you mentioning it made me want to go back and listen to Mick Huber, the Gators announcer, on that call, and it wasn't as pained as we all remembered it was. Kind of like Jameis with I said, you strong? I said, I'm strong if you strong. And then you go back and listen to it, it's like he literally says strong. Like he didn't lazily slur it out. And it's like, well, it's not as cool anymore. So we'll let everybody think that Mick Huber sounded the way you just sounded. I'm not going to.
Right.
So.
Man, so right now I'm watching, they have the 1993 Florida State-Nebraska game.
That's right, yeah.
On NBC Sports. And look, we all know what I think about Bobby Bowden. He's a great coach. He's the reason Florida State is Florida State. He's the reason there's a Warchant.
Yep.
The last minute of that game is about as poorly coached as any good team could be in a moment like that. I just watched Bentley kick a field goal with, 16 seconds left. And the entire team rushes on the field like the game's over.
Right.
I mean, number one, I know the history. I was at those games. I was at those rights. I know the history of field goal kickers in that moment for that team. So I get that they're all excited. I get they think they've won. But the game's not over. And not only that, it's the way the clock was managed to get to that point. They had the ball, first and goal at the 4-yard line, 25 seconds left, one timeout. They run a play to the right. Sean Jackson gets tackled. They immediately call timeout. Why wouldn't you let the clock run down to 2? Because they don't have any timeouts left. So I guess the thinking is, okay, we can call it, we'll call a timeout now. I wish they'd show the friggin' clock. I think there was 16, 18 seconds left. But why if you're kicking the field goal, would you, there's 21 seconds left. It's impossible. So he kicked that with like 25, 24 seconds left. Why wouldn't you let the clock run all the way down to 2? Kick the field goal and the game's over. Why did they call a timeout with 24 seconds left to kick a 20-yard field goal?
Well, in case you fumble the snap, you can.
But you don't have another timeout. That's it. So that was their last timeout.
Yeah.
So that was my thinking is, okay, yeah, if you have 2 timeouts. But even then, I think you would let it run down to 9 and like tell Danny Cannell, hey, Danny, look, if you fumble the snap, fall on it, we'll call a timeout real quick, we'll do it again.
Right.
But with no timeouts left, why in the world would you call a timeout with 21 seconds left instead of letting it run down to 3, kick the field goal, the game's over? Anyway, sorry, that was only 27 years ago.
Well, you've been chasing it for so long. I guess you're just so anxious. I'm sure all that stuff goes out the window. And, that was before you had your mafia of polo shirt wearing people telling you when to go for 2 and, clocks and timing and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, to me, it was crazy. And also, there was 24 seconds left after they called that timeout. You could have tried to score a touchdown. I know it's a 20-yard field goal, but it's a tough angle. And it's Florida State. Like, you're going to leave it in the hands of a freshman kicker? So, anyway, not only do you not go for the touchdown, then you decide you're going to just kick the field goal, but you don't run the clock down to 3 seconds. So you call a timeout, then decide to kick the field goal. And then you don't tell the sideline, hey, when he makes this, don't rush the field, so we have to kick off from the 20-yard line. Yeah. So, anyway, let's get on with the show, Aslan. And they won the game. And it was he kicks a line drive. The Nebraska kid catches it at the 20. And now Nebraska has the ball at the 44-yard line with 14 seconds left.
Yeah.
I remember that's crazy.
Yeah. You were obviously there. I was watching it at home, and I remember feeling that inevitability of the game is over. But then with the penalty, the kickoff, and it was like, oh, my gosh, they're going to get a shot at kicking a field goal, and this would be the most cruel way imaginable for Florida State and Bobby Bowden to lose. But it didn't happen that way. It all worked out.
It did. It did. Everybody was happy at the end, but holy moly, did they make that a lot closer than it needed to be.
Do stay connected with Warchant.com coming up this weekend. I think Ira's got a sit-down one-on-one with assistant coach of the baseball team, Mike Metcalf. We also have the latest hot topic debate up on the Tribal Council, and that is the whole name, image, and likeness thing, which is part of the inquiry or the query I put out there on the Renegade Express. We called it They Got Paid Week, so I asked everybody what are their thoughts on this. Is it a watershed moment? Also, in our previous hot topic, we talked about scheduling. If they have to start the season late, are you fine with that if it means no non-conference games? But before we dive into the questions from folks, and they obviously shared their opinion on the whole name, image, and likeness thing, we talked about it. It's also a video up on YouTube, so when you're done with this one and you want to listen to some more audio, you can do that, or you can just watch the video of it. I entered that discussion with you, Gene, and Ira staunchly entrenched, like on Gene's side. I was like, this is horrible. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. These kids are going to get paid, like, legally. We're all going to know about it. And I know they're getting paid illicitly right now. I'm kind of fine with that, though. I don't know if making the analogy with marijuana is inappropriate or inaccurate, but it's, before it became legalized in many states and decriminalized overall, it was just kind of one of these things where, like, everybody's smoking pot. It's not that big of a deal. And it's like, all right, well, yeah, let's just keep it this way then. Like, I'm not about throwing people in jail for it, but, like, I don't think we should just make it like, it's fine. Anybody can do it. It's really not that bad. I just think about, like, a 12-year-old. I think about, like, Brady doing pot. And I'm like, yeah, probably not a good idea. Probably not a good idea to let kids be doing these things.
Right.
And I know there's regulations to prevent it, but, like, there's a lot of people I know, my friends that never smoked pot, didn't like it, were around it all the time, never did it. But now that it's legal, like, I take some gummies before I go to bed and da-da-da-da-da. So it's like it was out there and whatever. It was what it was. But, like, now when it's, like, in the open and you drive past all these shops and they got, like, pot leaf emblems and it's like, man, this is kind of weird. But to their defense, yeah, the world keeps spinning. Nothing is really, like, crime hasn't shot up. There hasn't been all sorts of crazy things that have happened in our society because marijuana has now been legalized. So I do wonder, like, my whole thing was like, yeah, I get that guys are getting paid under the table, but let's just leave it that way. I don't feel like we need to bring it all out into the open. It's gonna shake and jar up the fabric of the sport. But it's like, but really will it? And I think you made the salient point in the debate, and it was just, man, it's not of an 85-person scholarship roster in football, how many of those guys are really going to get marketing and endorsement deals? At least substantial ones. Second-string linebacker, maybe he can go sign autographs at the mall before the spring game, and he'll get, I don't know, $100 for signing a couple 8x10 glossies. So you swayed my opinion, Corey.
Well, I'm glad I did that. Well, hey, by the way, what just happened? It sounded like the audio completely changed.
I don't know. Here, maybe my voice. My voice is a little bit loud.
No, it sounds like more. It's more stereo now than it was.
I don't know. Enjoy. You're
but
welcome.
everything's still good.
Everything still looks good over on my end.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll just pick it up. Yeah, man. When we were doing that, number one, I didn't know Gene was so against it. And I get what he's saying. I understand the concern. It's not like I'm not in the camp that just says completely just let them do what they want. Like if they want to transfer. If they want to get paid, let them get paid. Whatever I'm not in that camp because at some point it becomes. I mean, we're all realists, but still it becomes pro football, and we don't want that. You don't want, kids on a college football team, student athletes getting paid $12 million total combined, whatever it is, to go play football. That's just not the spirit of what we're trying to do. At the same time, my point with that was Tua. Let's take Tua or Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow could have gotten, he could have been the first Bank of New Orleans and gotten $350,000, $500,000 last fall, and he still would have been underpaid as a sponsored guy, right? Like for a spokesman for a company. But by and large, he's already at LSU, and he's going to be He was going to be a millionaire in 2 months anyway. So what we're really worried about, I think, is the guys on the roster from 25 to 45. Are they getting paid anything? Do you think?
Right now, like under the table and stuff, no, but they might have gotten an enticement when they committed, when they were a high 4-star kind of guy, and there was a battle between them.
No, I meant more like
on the payroll.
Starting when this happens, when this goes.
Okay.
What is the I don't know, the freshman cornerback at Alabama that's in the rotation, might not start yet, but he's going to be a big deal. What is he getting as a freshman? What kind of deals are they striking that are above board, that are actually on the books? He's getting paid. He's advertising for this, that, and this. I mean, I don't see that being a huge deal. I think it's going to be at Alabama. It's going to be the dudes that are about to go pro. You got 10 guys. Well, at Alabama, who knows, 12 guys. LSU, you got 5 guys maybe. Georgia, maybe 5, 6 guys, and on and on and on. It's not going to be this waterfall of, in my opinion, this waterfall, $1 million waterfall from boosters to these college players. I don't think.
You're right. Yeah. It's, let's use Florida State's like 2014 roster. Defending national champs. Is Reggie Northrup and Terrence Smith getting endorsements? No.
Even is Cam Irving.
Right.
Like, he would probably get something like, hey.
Maybe in Moultrie. Yeah, maybe like whatever. If there's a Ford dealership in Moultrie, would maybe do it.
Sure, but what kind of money does a Ford dealership in Moultrie, what are they really lining Cam Irving's pockets with?
Like $25,000 in a free truck.
Maybe, yeah, a free car. Which, are we going to clutch our pearls at that?
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, maybe I should, but I'm not. I just don't. I think somebody like Cam Irving or Dalvin Cook or name them, Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey could have done 1,000 different ads. For gloves, clapping in people's faces. Whatever he wanted to do. Kelvin Benjamin. With like hair care products or something. Like there was a lot of people but I don't even think like Kelvin Benjamin
local
or Rashad Green.
Local Allstate. If I was an Allstate insurance guy in Tallahassee, I'm having Kelvin. You're in good hands. I'm running that. Although I don't know if you have the rights to run that play of him catching the touchdown. But obviously, we all know.
No, you probably don't. You could probably do something where you simulate it in the parking lot or something. I don't know.
Right.
Because didn't you say they can't say what school they're from?
Yeah. They can't. Can't. So if you have Trevor Lawrence and your I don't know, what do they call that part? Bilo or whatever of South Carolina? I don't know. South Carolina's, they got parts of their, I don't know what they call that region of South Carolina. But anyhow, if the Chevy dealership out there wants Trevor Lawrence to advertise Silverados, he can't wear his jersey. He can't wear a Clemson T-shirt. It would have to be something that doesn't distinguish the fact that he plays for Clemson University.
But obviously, we all know that he does.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what it's going to come down to, in my opinion, look, there's always been big money boosters in this sport that have $100, $500 handshakes, or heck, in some cases, $180,000 envelopes.
Let's go.
That happens. It's always happened. So now more of it will be above board where you can actually do it and you're getting something for it, I guess, technically, quote unquote. There'll have to be books. They'll have to be, it's money that I assume has to be reported on taxes.
Well, yeah.
So
school. I think the school has to also be informed of it as well.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to be like, oh man, let's all go to, like Alabama's always going to get players, man. Ohio State's always going to get players. That hasn't changed. Georgia, Florida State, Florida. What you wonder about is someone, and I brought it up on the video we did, somebody like Arkansas that's been just awful forever, or because they got Walmart money now. Can they just put like the whole signing class into a big Walmart commercial and pay them each $50,000 or $100,000? The Waltons aren't going to miss that money. They have more money than anybody but an Amazon guy. So they're not going to miss that money. So maybe that can change the landscape. I don't see it as a seismic shift because it already is the haves and the have-nots. Who was the last football power to burst onto the scene?
Florida State.
That's had staying power. Is it Florida State? I don't know. It could be.
I mean, really? I mean, yeah.
Florida State, Miami, Florida, they all came up in the mid 80s and became powers into, well into the 90s. But yeah, Oregon, maybe? Yeah. Is that the last one?
I guess Clemson, to a certain degree, has kind of had a
resurgence. Yeah, but Clemson won a title in 81.
Yeah.
So they were a power back then, and they were a power all up until Florida State joined the ACC. So yeah, it's gonna you made a point on the video about like a Georgia football player. There's a lot of Fortune 500 companies in Atlanta that can I don't know that he's going to be doing a Delta commercial, but there's access to that. I don't know that anybody at Alabama, maybe Birmingham, you could do like a Birmingham bank or something.
Yeah.
But again, that big money booster guy. We don't think that some of these Alabama guys have been taken care of in the past, this way or that way. Like now, instead of paying Julio Jones under the table, allegedly, hypothetically, these are all hypotheticals, folks. I literally don't have any inside information. I'm just going on what the history of Alabama and the SEC. But let's say hypothetically that Julio Jones's family got $250,000 to come to Alabama. Again, that is an outlandish number, but who knows? We don't know. Now he'd have to hey, I'm Julio Jones, and when I like to go banking, this is the place I come to, or I love barbecue. But at least it's above board, and it's not, and his eligibility isn't in question. It isn't risked because it's illegal now. It's legal now.
But he's still getting the bag to go there. I mean, because you can tell the parents, like, listen, you come here, we have a Ford dealership that's lined up. Our Zaxby's franchise guy out here loves the Tide, and he'll give you money too. But it's like that stuff is that's two in the bush as opposed to one in the hand or whatever. It's like, but we're still going to need $100,000 to actually come there, and that's where this thing kind of gets murky. And to the point that you were bringing back that I mentioned on the video. You talked about it. There's like 5 or 6 schools legitimately that have a chance to win the national title every year. Maybe a little bit more than that. I do feel like with this now, you're giving a school, I think like schools like Texas, I think Georgia, I think Alabama, I think they're uniquely positioned because of their geography. I really do, man, because I think you could if you had Leonard Fournette at UGA, I would think Delta nationally would maybe be like, this guy's probably a good pitch man. Everyone knows who he is. Plus, it'll play really good in the state of Georgia because you're not going to alienate anybody when you're running a Leonard. Let's use him at LSU. You're not going to alienate anybody in New Orleans when you're pumping out the LSU guy as your pitch man. In Florida, you can't do that. I don't think. I don't think you can. You can't put. Kyle Trask in Tampa. Because you're going to piss off the Florida State fans, the USF fans that are in that city. I just think a place like Athens, you go there now, it's like, man, Georgia is your whole, we can put you anywhere in the state as our ad guy, and you're going to sell like hotcakes. Austin in Texas. Yeah, man, we can run you in San Antonio, we can run you in Dallas, and you're going to be golden.
I guess, how many of those guys at Georgia? Jake Fromm, number one, Jake would have had to do a State Farm ad. Jake from State Farm.
Right.
So that would have been perfect. But, how many Georgia guys really have that cachet? And I live in the state half the time.
Yeah.
It isn't a ton. It's usually the quarterback, the running back, maybe a great defensive player, and that's it. Now, these local car dealerships or these local grocery stores or whatever can pay a couple grand. But I don't think that these grocery stores, if they're really trying to get a bang for their buck and actually get the endorsement money to matter, where they're promoting their product, I don't know that you're looking at $150,000 to a lineman or to the number 2 wide receiver or a starting safety that isn't like a Thorpe candidate.
Yeah, you're
but
not.
I could be wrong. It's so odd. It's hard to even imagine. It's hard to even get in the mindset of what this is going to look like. Am I going to, next year, is Akeem Dent going to be on my TV telling me, hey, when I like to drop things, I drop, whatever he's gonna do. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what could he do just to make fun of that.
Cleaning
Or
up a
hey,
spill.
let's do another way. Let's make it where he becomes awesome, because I do think he's got a chance. Maybe he's putting a dent into something. I feel like advertising is where I should have really gone with my career.
Like a body shop. If you're a body shop in Tallahassee, Akeem Dent.
Yeah, we'll get the dent out. Doesn't make sense, but we'll figure it out. Hey, we're spitballing. These are no bad ideas right now.
It's organic. We're letting it
no
flow.
bad ideas. These are brainstorming. Everything works. But yeah, so I'm going to have Akeem Dent looking at me next year, or Chubba Purdy looking at me next year, and it's just going to be it's going to be odd to see, but at the same time, cool, man. You're getting. I don't think they're good. It's not money that's going to make most of them rich. It's not money that's going to make any of them rich. It's basically walking around. You can go buy a nice TV. Maybe you get a car, but would any of us really thought it was unfair if Dalvin Cook was driving around a free Mustang because he did a pitch for the Ford dealership in town?
Right. I mean, I wonder, like, with all the distractions, if you will. Let me pull up my Jimbo. Like, all the distractions, like, these guys are also now going to have agents that are their marketing and advertising representatives. So, like, they get out of practice and they're not checking their phone to go on Instagram, but it's like, hey, did you land me that that endorsement deal? That's going to be a crazy thing.
Yeah, and it is going to be a part of recruiting where you're like, look, maybe in the past, recruiting there have been lines like, look, yeah, we got a friend at a dealership that if you want a deal on a car, we can help you out with. I mean, we all know how the world works. Yeah. But now the recruiting pitch is, because, yeah, if I'm a dad or a mom, well, not a mom, I wouldn't be a mom, but if I'm a dad of a great athlete and all these schools are recruiting me, I'm like, okay, well, what do you have for him off the field as far as endorsement opportunities? Yeah. Much like you would if you're a first-round pick in the NFL. But I still don't think you can say, look, usually we have a couple lined up. Now, obviously, they're not going to – we have 5, 6, 7 businesses lined up. Obviously, they go with the upperclassmen more often than not because they're more well-known. But if he bursts onto the scene and has a really good freshman year, we have friends in businesses that we can get endorsement deals. I just don't think it's going to be life-changing money. I don't think it's going to be sport-changing money. Because the people that are going to get the real dollar, like Jameis would have in 2014, he could have gotten $10 million in endorsements probably. He was that well known. He was one of the most famous football players on the planet. But, like Gene said, Crab Shack, Publix, I mean, the possibilities were endless with Jameis. But he was going to make that money anyway in a couple months. Yeah. What you wonder about, I think, is, like I said, the roster from 25 to 45. That could be where a place like in Alabama has an advantage. Because let's be honest, Florida State, I don't know how many local businesses are going to be lining these guys' pockets with wads of cash where it's enticing enough that a recruit knows if he goes to Florida State, he's going to get X amount of dollars because of the endorsement deal. Even if he doesn't pan out, even if he's Corey Mangum, he's still going to, golly, I'm just taking shots at everyone. I'm sorry, folks. Even if he's Corey Clark, even if he turns out to be an awful athlete like Corey Clark, he's still going to get paid because they've got hookups. Now, that's where I think it could get dicey. But we'll see. I just think the top 5% of college football, they're going to be they're already the haves. Ohio State, think about that with Columbus. You got Cincinnati and there's no competition for you in Ohio.
Yeah, again, man, that's what I'm concerned about if I'm a Florida State fan. I just think about the sort of economic limitations of this city versus.
Hey, they can only sign 25 a year, buddy.
Yeah, you're right.
They can only sign 25 a year. But yeah, and it's not like Ohio State's struggling right now anyway.
Yeah. Well, you talk about guys 25 through 45 on the scholarship. This is the last I'll mention of it, then we'll get to the questions, which a lot of them are going to hopefully give us some of their thoughts on this. But, a place like Ohio State, or what if our Zaxby's down here in Tallahassee just pretty much every year rolls out a promo with like the starting 5 offensive linemen. But a place like, let's say Mississippi State doesn't have that. And Florida State had a offensive lineman, Charles Cross, that was a 3-star that was committed to Florida State. And then after, sort of the first season of Willie Taggart's tenure kind of came to the forefront, he decided that he was going to go to Starkville, and he ended up being a 5-star recruit. But like, imagine if he come to Florida State because every year, like the Zaxby's guy puts all the offensive linemen in this like goofy ad that runs on television in 3-4 markets in Florida, counting Tallahassee, but like Starkville doesn't do that. And you end up getting, like $15,000, and you're getting free Zaxby's all the time. Can't put a price tag on that.
Well, no, you can't at all. That's a great idea. Plus, what about the Warchant sponsorships that are going to be coming?
Yeah,
that's going to be a flood. Uh-huh. When Langston's recruiting a kid, or not recruiting a kid, when he's talking to a kid about his recruitment, he'll just pitch. Hey, and by the way, if you come here, here's what we got lined up for you. You're going to be our main guy. We're going to roll out we got a marketing campaign for you. It's 3 phases. Like that could be part of the pitch. And it sounds like, well, I am joking. I was going to say it sounds like I'm joking. I am joking. But hey, that's a possibility. Like, we're a business. I don't know what would stop us from getting some of these recruits when they sign to be our pitchmen. Like, hey, when I'm looking for news, I go to the best. Right. And he puts his arm around me and we walk off camera together.
When I throw 3 picks in a game and I want to have my self-confidence shattered, I go to the Tribal Council on Warchant.com and see what people think about me. My mom and dad love it. All right, let's segue to our questions over on the Tribal Council on Warchant.com. Maxwell Gibbs says, "Wake up, Sweet Pea." You too, Aslan. He shares his thoughts on the name, image, and likeness, as well as scheduling, saying that the NCAA allowing players to profit off their likeness, but limiting what they can wear and not allowing school references is just plain dumb. Then again, it is the NCAA. Now, hopefully, though, they can bring EA Sports NCAA football back. Regarding the scheduling, I will not be happy if the non-conference slate is axed, and also if the season starts in the spring semester. We need to play it as scheduled. Everything will go back to normal, as much as, quote, journalists want the people to believe that it will not. Here's my question, FSU related. Since Coach Ham is a recruiting machine now, what is your take on players going into the G League instead of going the collegiate route for a year? Currently, there are 3 5-star signees from the class of 2020 who will now be going the route of the G League.
Yeah, so the last one, and I can't remember his name, he was committed to UCLA, or he had signed with UCLA. He wasn't committed. That was the one that I think raised eyebrows, because what the G League had said, because they wanted to kind of market themselves to college players that just wanted to, I think it's a $500,000 contract, which is certainly more than they'd get for 1 year on campus at the ACC or the SEC. But they said that they weren't going to actively recruit players that were already committed or signed to another school. The first 2 guys they got were guys that had not committed anywhere.
Yeah,
they were already the G League was always a possibility. But this kid had been, I think, committed for a while and had already signed, and that raised some eyebrows. Like, oh, okay, so is this going to be a real thing now? And it could be. I'm a little bit concerned about it because, again, just from a sports fan perspective, because if there's a lot of teams in the G League, like I guess right now they're all on just going to one team, these high school kids, but there's 100 spots available in the G League. Now, I don't know if the NBA would want all the top 100 recruits in college, because that's the thing. None of these guys, I shouldn't say that. One out of 20 probably 2 out of the top 25 guys in the country are ready to contribute in the NBA right now. Like a LeBron James, just awesome right out of high school. Kevin Durant, people like that.
That's a really high bar, man.
Yeah, so the NBA, I don't think the NBA likes this, them getting a year in college. I really do believe that. And I think it's their rule. It is their rule.
Yeah.
The NBA likes that year. Number one, it's easier to scout. It's easier to scout Patrick Williams when he plays a year in the ACC and you can see him up against other really good players, as opposed to West Charlotte High School when he's playing a bunch of 6'1" kids. It's just easier for them to do their jobs. So that's why they did it in the first place. There were so many swings and misses on these kids coming straight out of high school, obviously, because you don't get to see them against great competition. So the NBA likes that idea because they want a year between high school and the pros. Well, now they have this little buffer, this little area where, okay, these guys go play in the G League for a year. Now they'll really know what they're getting because they're playing grown men. They're playing professional basketball players. And I think it's something that, I fear it could be like the guys that skip the bowl games. And again, I completely understand it. I'm all for those guys doing it. But 7 years ago, we had never heard of it. And now it's 50 guys a year. Next year, it'll be 100 guys. And it's just going to keep going. I wonder if, because doesn't it make sense, Aslan? Like if you know you're going to go pro anyway, and you didn't grow up a huge college basketball fan, why wouldn't you just go play in the G League for 5 months and go make $500,000 as opposed to go getting screamed at a college you're only going to be at for 4 months, playing essentially for free?
Yeah, you're right. And also, why let these kids leave and go overseas and play ball when you can keep them here
right.
and, help start grooming them and even, making them marketable stars. I don't know, but how much of the college basketball model should college football be looking at and saying we don't want to be this? Because you talked about if you grew up and you're not a big college basketball fan, I think kids who play college football, I think, are much more have an affinity for college football more so than college basketball. I think college basketball is all about the NBA. And I know for college football players, they all aspire to get to the NFL, but I still think there's a little bit of there's the rivalries, and I know college basketball has it, but it feels like there's a little bit more to being a college football player than just simply like biding one semester and 6 months in some little cow town college before you end up making your millions. Like there's kind of you're having to invest more time, so there is a little bit of that innocence, or I don't know, whatever that we are so drawn to in college. Because listen, man, we don't like college football because the guys on the field aren't making any money. No one's cheering like, oh, awesome, 70-yard touchdown. I bet that kid only had Rice Krispies for breakfast this morning. That's awesome. There's just this kind of belief that they're out there playing for something bigger than themselves. And I know that sounds so stupidly naive, but yeah, that's the thing about college basketball. Like they feel, everyone on that level practically feels like mercenaries. That's why Florida State's so easy to root for, because the way that Leonard recruits these kids and builds them into his program. And now there's some one and done, two and done guys, but there feels that family 18 strong sort of vibe. It makes a very sort of wholesome team to root for. And I just hope that doesn't become, the rarity when it comes to college football. Although, I mean, who's really wholesome? I don't know.
Yeah, and I wonder, like moving forward, like would a Scotty Barnes, would he just say, I'm going to keep my options open? I might go to the G League. I might go to Florida State. We're going to see. And even if a kid commits to you, are you wondering then, oh man, is he going to honor this? Or in 3 months, is he going to tell us he's going to the G League? And none of us can blame him. Literally, I don't know how it could hurt your career. They're still going to scout you, and you're playing against better competition. And if you're as good as you're supposed to be, you're going to be a lottery pick anyway. Scotty Barnes is going to be a lottery pick, we think. So, so what would it hurt? And I'm not saying he's doing this. I'm just saying in the future, guys like him might say, you know what? Instead of going and playing for free, quote unquote free. I know they get books paid for and classes paid for, although they're going to be out of school in 6 months anyway. I'm going to go get $500,000. I can already set up. I can set up something for my family. I mean, some of these kids, obviously, we all know, come from awful backgrounds or rough backgrounds. And $500,000, well, $500,000 is a lot of money for almost all of us.
Yeah.
Imagine being 18 and having that thrown at you, and you don't have to go to school. You just get to be a professional basketball player. It's gonna be interesting. I know a lot of people on Twitter were saying, yeah, whatever. It's not going to affect college. It's only going to be 4 or 5 guys a year. Well, we'll see. We'll see, because there's a lot of G League teams. Yeah. And the 54th guy in the country coming out of high school might be like, you know what? I think I'm good enough. I'm going to go play in the G League. And now I don't know if they're going to offer him everybody that comes $500,000, but I think I'm good enough to play in the NBA. I think I'm good enough to play in the G League. I'm going to forego college and get better playing against pros. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. I guess I'm a little bit pessimistic, hoping that it doesn't. Because man, it just was a bummer back in that when we had that run when all the really good players just went straight to the pros. Now, not a bummer for them. Good for them. They got to go make money. It just college basketball lost a lot of really good athletes for that 6 or 7 year stretch.
Marnell 55. Wake up! Corey, on Monday's show, you took up for the kids that left college early to go undrafted. I want to focus on Samuels in particular. I think he's talking about Stanford Samuels III.
Right.
If he wanted to come back, would you take him? Personally, I would not. We now know he ran a 4.65 40. Maybe that is why he gave up so many deep balls, and his constant incomplete pass celebrations were a little bit annoying, even if he did come back or could come back. I wonder if Norvell would take him.
Yeah, I wonder that too. I don't know that he would have any ill will towards Stanford Samuels. It might be like, yeah, man, come on back. I think not a lot, but there's a pretty probably, I don't even want to say high percentage. There's a certain percentage of all these guys that declare early and don't get drafted that would probably not be welcome back on the team they just left. And maybe there was some stuff behind the scenes, which is the reason why a fringe draft pick at all would leave in the first place when he's not guaranteed of getting drafted. So I don't know that's I don't think that's Stanford Samuel's deal. I just think he got bad advice or thought too highly of himself. But I would certainly hope that Norvell, unless he was completely out of scholarships, would take him back. Or if they had a conversation and Norvell's like, look, man, this is a mistake. And again, a hypothetical. This is a mistake. You might not get drafted, dude. And if you leave right now, we're filling your spot. And you might not have a spot if you don't get drafted. And if Stanford Samuels if they have that conversation, he still bounces anyway, and then he doesn't get drafted and he calls and says, can I come back? I could understand the coach being like, no, man, I told you. We've already filled your spot. But if Cam Akers had lasted to the 5th round and said, you know what, I want to come back and play college football again and maybe become a 3rd rounder next year, or maybe a 1st rounder, or maybe be an All-American, I think Mike Norvell's like, you know what, Cam? Absolutely. Yeah. Let's do this. So I don't know. I don't know if he'd take him. What do you think? You think he'd take him back?
Yeah. I mean, he's serviceable.
Yeah, he is. And it doesn't, yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have him back in the rotation, even if he's not starting.
Big Steve-O 22. What is up, fellas? I'm all about the players getting paid for their likeness, but that is a very odd restriction. I can't even think of a reason how that makes any sense. Like Maxwell Gibbs stated, it is the NCAA. I think they were talking about, obviously, the fact that you can't wear, your school marks or all that kind of stuff. I mean, here's the official language of it or whatever. You can model apparel as long as that apparel does not include school logos or other school marks. You are not allowed to reference the school you attend or include any school marks in the advertisement. So you would have to say, if you were from Gainesville, it'd be like, yeah, I'm from Hogtown. I'm from the place, I go to the school that everybody stops in I-75 on their way to Lake City.
It's going to be like, those commercials where like Brett Favre would be wearing like just a generic green jersey for like doing some vitamin supplement. I mean, Brett Favre will do any commercial.
He will.
That's what it's going to be like. It's going to be like, James Blackman wearing a garnet shirt, like a garnet and yellow, or red and yellow, but not quite Florida State colors. And it's just going to be goofy, but it'll be fun. I mean, I'm really part of me is really excited to see how creative these local dealerships and local businesses get with the commercials for these guys.
Big Steve-O 22 continues, I would be okay if they nixed the non-conference schedule if that means we have football in the fall. I know everyone wants to play the season normally as it would be laid out, as do I, but if we get football and don't have to play a non-conference schedule, well, so be it. Also wanted to comment on what Maxwell stated about high school players jumping to the G League for basketball. Part of me thinks it's dumb due to them getting a lack of education at the collegiate level, but with it being mostly 5-stars, they are likely going to be one and done anyway. The G League does offer them a chance to compete against NBA talent right away and probably help them develop their game better. Overall, will it be bad for college basketball? I think not. Got to remember how many schools there are and players there are in this country. In closing, Corey, loved the episode of Warchant with EJ. I was at that game, and it was amazing. My buddy and I actually stayed at the hotel where the FSU team stayed at and got to meet Jimbo, Odell, and a few other coaches. Also got to chat with Scott Van Pelt at the end of game day, which was great. Good dude. I also remember telling my buddy before the game to focus on DeAndre Hopkins, not Sammy Watkins. Told him he will be a much better NFL player than Sammy. Look at that.
Wow, well, that's, hey, Nostradamus over here.
Scout it out for us, Steve-O. Let us know who's the next big thing.
Yeah, that's that was a pretty impressive game with old and certainly EJ's best game, for sure. So yeah, folks, if you haven't listened to that, do it. Not because of Gene and I thought EJ was just great. You know, he talked about Jimbo, he talked about obviously that game, he talked about how that season kind of propelled them to the championship the next year. And you might roll your eyes and go like, yeah, EJ, sure, it was just because they got the quarterback. Well, no, that's not really it. Yeah, Jameis was better than EJ. But all those guys did kind of grow up in 2012. And that NC State game, I think they did learn a lot from that game. I really do. And that Clemson game was a big game because it's the first time those dudes had won anything like that really, truly mattered. A top 10 showdown at night, huge stage, huge audience. They get down and they come back and beat the brakes off Clemson in the second half.
It's a good
Those
night.
were the days, weren't they, Aslan?
Them were the days.
And hey, in the last point, I hope he's right. I do think it'll probably starting it'll just be a few 5 stars, but then maybe it's all the 5 stars, and then it starts to. I mean, man, go back and look at some of those drafts in like 2003. There were high school kids There were high school kids that went undrafted. There were high school kids getting drafted with the 55th pick. There were a bunch of high school kids in the mix. So I just think. All those kids think they're going to the league. Any kid in the top 100 thinks he's an NBA player. And if they're getting bad advice, or if they got handlers or people in their camp in quotes, because that's I imagine being 17 and having a camp. But if they're being told, yeah, man, you need just go do this now and go get your $500,000, and then you'll be able to be drafted the next year. I worry that it's a slippery slope there, and more and more kids might start going that route. I hope I'm wrong.
It'd be nice, I think you mentioned on the video, if they could offer these scholarships multi-year as opposed to, year by year. So then maybe that would entice these kids to come play basketball because, if they do go one and done, they can always come back and get their education if it doesn't work out in the NBA. Whereas if they go to the G League, then, you spend all that $500,000, you're not going to be able to – the last thing you're going to probably want to do is, start cutting checks for tuition to get your degree. But,
right.
These schools are also hurting financially, and I don't know how many of them are going to be eager to offer fully guaranteed 4-year scholarships to players that, only show up for a year. But we'll see how that goes. Mad AMCZ, wake up, gents. What's the most impressive thing you've seen so far under Mike Norvell and his staff? What's the most surprising? Love the show. Even without football, you guys get better every week. Well,
that's sweet.
Appreciate that. Thank you, man.
What do you think, Aslan? You take that one.
Well, I don't think this is ever going to see the light of day. I had an idea for a series that we could do. I've watched 2 games now from Mike Norvell's tenure at Memphis. Losses. Why do I want to watch him win? I don't.
Right. Yeah, that's just kind of your outlook on life.
I mean, I don't know what you learned from that. It just feels like,
Right.
I watched the 2018 game against UCF, which I think they actually ended up rematching them in the conference championship game. This wasn't the year they won it all. UCF was the defending national champs going to this game. So Memphis already had a loss or 2 on the ledger. And they hosted UCF, and they ripped off like 30 points in the first half, and they lost the game, I think, 31-30. So it's kind of a bummer. But I did not see anything like fundamentally broken with his approach. I didn't really see all that bad I didn't see any sort of cringeworthy game management kind of things. So that's what, that gives me encouragement. Because I always remember I looked at the games that Taggart lost, and people are like, well, first off, that's not fair. And then second off, he lost Justin Herbert after game 3 or 4. So, you don't get a full idea of what he had at his disposal. My whole thing is, all right, whatever, man. When blank is hitting the fan, I want to see how you're reacting because then I'll know really how good you are. and that UCF game, it became a gong show at one point. I have the notes written down here, but it kind of goes back and forth. It's tough to really follow here. But to start off the fourth quarter, or actually rather, this is in the third quarter. It was 4th and 1 for UCF. They were like deep in their own formation, UCF, and they're going to go for it. Memphis calls a timeout, or UCF calls a timeout. Then they come back out. Memphis calls a timeout. Then UCF still decides to go for it on 4th and 1, deep in their own territory, and they bust off like this huge, huge run. And that kind of sparks them in the second half. Well, Memphis gets the ball on the kickoff, and they fumble like on the second play. So you've just surrendered a 4th and 1 into like a 60-yard touchdown. You get the ball back, and you just fumbled. Like, oh my flipping God, we're done. Our goose is cooked. Well, they turned UCF over like the very next play, and then 2 plays later, they called this beautiful play-action misdirection play that got him a huge chunk of yards. And I think that drive might have ended with a field goal. But, like, to me, that showed poise. Like, it was raining. You're playing the defending national champions. I'm joking about that, but still, it's
Sure.
the biggest game on your schedule that year. And to, like, come back and have the wherewithal to dial up a really good play after you've turned the ball over, after you've surrendered that, that to me was really encouraging. The only 2 things that happened in that game that were a little bit and I watched the Temple game from last year, and that game, there was a little more in that one. But to end the first half, he tried to ice the kicker, and the kicker missed it and then got another shot. Like, he called the timeout too late, and then the kicker got another opportunity, and he actually made it. They ended up losing the game by 1 point, but that's, that wasn't the determining factor. But those coaches do that. It happens. It's not being a bad coach doing it, just the way the kind of cookie crumbles on it. So I think when you watch games, and I did that a lot. I watched every game in 2016 with Florida State, and when people were totally panicking about Jimbo, I was like, man, like, if you watch the game again, you would realize that, like, literally all this nonsense he talks about, inches away, 1 play away, like they really were outside the Louisville game, obviously. Well, that moment, and then to end the game, so they had 3 timeouts. They used 2 timeouts to try to totally stop out UCF, and they couldn't. So UCF was able to bleed out more clock. They only had like 1 timeout left, and I think they had the ball with maybe like a minute or so left. Dude, Memphis ripped off 4 plays and were in field goal range. Here's the thing, though, Corey. This is going to be probably way too – you probably already regret letting me take this question because we're on like minute 17 now of it. But in those 4 plays, every play was snapped on the left hash. Now, they're going from right to left on your screen. So it's on the left hash, which if you're watching the TV feed, it's the bottom hash. Okay, so those 4 plays are all completed and hiked and snapped on the left hash. So they're running trips to the far side, to the field side, so the top of your screen, rather, where there's more field between the ball and the boundary. So they're running trips on that side, and the running back is also lined up to the right of the quarterback. Well, like on that 4th play where they complete the pass into UCF territory, into field goal range, the guy catches the ball, and he's down on the right hash. So now they're having to flip everything over because everything is predicated on where the ball is located. So now all the receivers are lining up in trips on the bottom of your screen on the left side. Well, the running back didn't get the memo. The running back is standing to the right of the quarterback. The quarterback has to like tap him on the shoulder like, yo, dude, you need to swing around this other way. Well, that creates enough sort of time and breaks the rhythm that the offensive lineman, God bless his heart, is like leaning back on his heels, like snap the ball already, please, and he false starts. There was 28 seconds left, so there was a 10-second runoff because of the false start, and they have to back up 5 yards. They take 5 seconds to snap the ball, which is a little bit concerning, and then it becomes like a Burt Reed situation. Now, the thing is, he should have just thrown it away. He should have thrown it away and then had like a Hail Mary, or they could have at least probably ran another play to try to get in field goal range. But Brady White kind of scrambles around, and he throws the ball to a receiver who wasn't going to get a first down, wasn't going to get out of bounds. So he's tackled inbounds, and that's the way the game ends, and Mike Norvell slams his headset. And that was like, but I'm not sitting here like, wow, Mike Norvell's a horrible coach, terrible. To me, it was like, listen, He really, in these 2 games I've watched, this Brady White guy is a decent quarterback. So all these people that think like, oh man, we really need a really good quarterback. Yeah, we do. It always helps. But he did. I don't think Brady White was that amazing. Maybe just performed really bad in the losses. But to me, that was kind of like the encouraging thing where it's like, man, he really didn't have a lot of help at the quarterback position. He was still putting up pretty good points, and he was down to the wire in each of those 2 games. So I've seen poise. I've seen creativity in the play calling. So those are the things that impress me. But in terms of what he's done in Tallahassee, man, we hung out with him for like 3 days. So that's all I got.
What was the question?
What was the most impressive thing we've seen so far from Mike Norvell?
Oh, okay. I literally, that sounded like a joke. It wasn't a joke. I really couldn't remember the question. Yeah, hey, I'll go with Aslan's answer. We haven't gotten to see a lot. He's been impressive anytime he talks, but do with that what you will.
Corey was going to watch the 5 wins, and I was going to watch 5 losses, but apparently you folks can't handle the truth. Everything I just told you is going to hurt your feelings and make you not want to read Warchant for like a month.
It sounded like you were, it sounded like those were glowing. Yeah,
man. I don't know. I don't know, man. Maybe sometimes I think I'm not part of the rank and file fan anymore, but I don't know. I think people want to know what their new coach is going to be like. But
I think he's good, man. I think he's, again, it's a gut more than anything right now. It's gut with some proof. I mean, obviously they went to the Cotton Bowl in Memphis, and they had, like we talked about, 7 guys drafted in 3 years, which is the most they've ever had in that span. Not a huge number, especially coming to a place that had 29 in 3 years. 7 isn't great, but that kind of shows you the disparity between Memphis and Florida State. That's a pretty big chasm there. So not only does he have the resume, but, man, when you listen to him and you hear the coaches talk about him and you hear the players talk about him, you feel that, okay, there's a chance. There's a chance this guy will be the dude that flips it around and Florida State becomes a power again. And he could maybe flip it around in a couple of years. There is a chance. And next year, when they play, he does have some talent on that roster. No Cam Akers, but a lot of other dudes that'll be playing in the league. At least 5, 6, 7 guys. So hopefully they can win some games, Aslan.
All right, Corey, we got 4 more questions, but we're at like the 57-minute mark because I like to pretend I know a lot about football after I watch film. But Backwoods Hick Knoll, wake up, everybody. Earmuffs offensive recruits. I'm detecting a trend, gentlemen, when it comes to NFL playmakers from Florida State University, where very few are really being big-time contributors, a.k.a. perennial Pro Bowlers. Dalvin is the only one that I can actually think of that has shown so far that he's as good in the NFL as he was in college. What up with that? Is it the development of the players or lack thereof? Lack of competition? But defensively, it translates extremely well. Positive news, congrats to Cam, and also I'm glad to hear that Jameis found a home, even though the fail cons, and the Bucks might have to face him next year. P.S. Have you guys ever tried the onion rings at Zaxby's? I don't think they have an equal, not even the varsity.
Those are serious words right there. I have not tried the onion rings at Zaxby's, but I have at the varsity, and I can promise you Zaxby's aren't as greasy. I can promise, because nothing on earth is as greasy. Grease isn't as greasy as the varsity's onion rings. But they're good. The offensive guys in the NFL, I think Benjamin, if he'd have stayed in shape and that was the one concern I had with that kid just going to the NFL, was that he got into incredible shape for his money year. But he certainly didn't take things seriously the first 2 years. And then I wondered.
He got injured too. That was kind of a bummer.
It was, but he showed up as a freshman. I mean, he was 280 pounds. So he wasn't ready to play. Sammy Watkins played as a true freshman and was awesome. So did Rashad Green. Kelvin Benjamin came in and just was not ready to play. And then his next year was just kind of so-so. And then he got into great shape, made a lot of, made money and had a nice year. But then I always wondered, okay, once he accomplishes that goal of being an NFL player and a first-round pick, will he have just the desire, I guess, to be great? Dalvin's been good. Yeah, the offensive guys, I'm sure there's some we're probably missing, but not a lot. I mean, Brian Stork and Trey Jack. Brian Stork especially was good. He just, he couldn't stay healthy, and he got out of the game while he still could, I guess.
Rodney Hudson's done all right, but I don't know if he qualifies as a playmaker. I don't know what is up with that. That is a good question because, these guys all played under Jimbo. Jimbo ran a quote-unquote pro-style offense. You figured it would translate. None of his quarterbacks really found success. Jameis, I guess we'll see. He's got the second act of his career coming up here in New Orleans. I was shocked to see Rashad not become, he's nothing. He, every now and then maybe made a catch or two for the Jags, but to see that he never got his career off the ground was quite a surprise. I don't know how much credit he'll get for Cam. I think Cam's going to end up being pretty darn good. I think Cam's going to be a good football player in the pros. Wide receiver-wise, how many really big-time receivers did he have? I guess, after the national championship is when he started stockpiling them, and Travis Rudolph left early, Ermon Lane. I just don't know if that was just a miss in terms of the evaluation on him because, they gave him every chance. They moved him to the other side of the field. They brought him back. I don't know how that really could be a coaching kind of issue. I think a lot of people down in South Florida said that he did not really play a lot of talented teams. He played at Homestead. It wasn't like he was playing like one of the public Miami schools. I don't know. I don't. Lack of competition is interesting. I saw this on Twitter. There was a stat here about the transfer portal. Cord, you know that there is 105 ACC players have entered the transfer portal since it became a thing in football. Okay, 105. Do you want to take a stab at how many have gotten scholarships at the FBS level? Not Power 5, but just the FBS level. 105 of them.
I would have thought all of them. No?
I'll throw 23.5. You'll take the over or the under.
I would have taken the over,
Clearly.
obviously.
Yeah. 10. Only 10 have landed scholarships at the FBS level, 7 at the Power 5. And just think about all the guys that have left Florida State. And,
so that's talking like the Francois, people like that?
Francois, Nasir Upshur, Alex Marshall. I wonder if Zaquandre White is in there because he did go JUCO, but I think he signed with South Carolina. So
all right.
He's a success story, I think. Yeah, I don't know. That's it's a bit of an interesting observation, but it's the NFL, man. Not everybody, is anybody out there really playmaker you right now? I know there's DBU. Is there anywhere that's just been cranking out awesome, amazing offensive talent?
Alabama, I'd say here recently with the wide receivers, Julio, Amari Cooper. Riley Cooper. It's a whole different dude. Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley. Yeah. Alabama's had some guys. But yeah, that's about it. As far as I'm sure there are other ones. Georgia's had a bunch of running backs. But I think more than anything there's no real rhyme or reason to that. They were good in college. Freeman was good, but it just so happened that those DBs were more like Derwin and Jalen and LaMarcus. Those guys were just more bona fide NFL players.
Yeah,
it's how it worked. But it's not like they didn't recruit big time playmakers.
Who knows if Carlos Williams could have stayed off trouble or out of trouble, rather. He was a guy that was kind of...
Hey, and Auden Tate had 40 catches last year. I just looked him up. He had 40 catches for the Bengals for 575 yards in only 12 games.
I was watching like ESPN News, and they had one of their radio shows on, and somebody who was a Bengals fan came in and made some bold proclamation about Joe Burrow. And I forgot what it was, but the host was like, "Really? You think he's going to throw that many touchdowns or have that many yards or that much success?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, he's got Auden Tate to throw to. Like he literally rattled off like 3 or 4 of the offensive playmakers that they have in Cincinnati. And the first person that he said, the first player out of his mouth was Auden Tate. So that was kind of cool.
There you go.
Yeah, I went to the varsity when Florida State played Tech back in 2015. The kick fiasco game or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, guys, we should go to the varsity. It's kind of like it's a thing, And they were like, nah, let's just drink. I'm like, come on, man. Let's get cultured. Let's go to the varsity. And I really had to poke and prod my friends to go. And then when we walked in, they were just so underwhelmed that we didn't even order anything. Like, is there not even, you can't even sit down and eat in there, really, can you? It's like a to-go place, isn't it?
No, you can. There's at least. I mean, I haven't been in a decade, maybe 20 years. But no, there were a bunch of different. There were a bunch of like dining rooms that had probably, if I remember correctly, like 8 or 10 tables in them.
Okay, I don't know.
So, and then there's bars you can sit at, like little. You know, you can sit up to a bar and put your food there with like a little stool. So there's places. Yeah, it's not. It's certainly when you go to other cities and you're like, oh, you got to try. I'm just throwing this out there, like Burns Steakhouse.
Right.
And whether you think Burns is the best steak on earth or not, it's still only Atlanta's like must-go-to restaurant is a place that serves chili dogs. You know, that's how we roll in Atlanta. But in Atlanta has some incredible restaurants, but nobody told you to go to Bones or Rathbun's or Bacchanalia. You're supposed to go to the Varsity.
Garnett 76. Wake up, fellas. I have really mixed feelings about the direction of college football. Having once been a broke college student myself, I can empathize with players wanting to get paid for their brand, quote unquote. But between this and what looks like almost free agency for player transfers about to happen, which stopped the presses, that actually might not be happening, Garnett 76. But to your point, it looks scary there for a minute. Those two things combined, it feels like we are stripping away what has made college football the great sport it is. I feel the same way about what has happened with the Olympics. The Dream Team was something different at first, but the Olympics is a time to get caught up in Greco-Roman wrestling and curling, not to find out what mansion a pampered multimillionaire athlete is living in during the games. And now talk about including video games as a sport. Don't even get me started with that. I'm sure we'll all come to grips with these developments, and if not, well, there's always Rudy and Hoosiers on Netflix. Most importantly, though, be well, Seminole Nation.
There you go. That's a good way to sign off. I get what you're saying. I do, and I'm part of my old man mindset is right there with you. But you know what? Florida State is paying a guy $16 million to not coach their football team. The money in college football has exploded so exponentially that we're never going back to the way it was. You know, we could, if Nick Saban will say, you know what, I just want $800,000. That's my limit. And if they set a limit on what these coaches can make, but they don't, and it's out of control, these football mansions are out of control. And so, you know, once the money became like that, where you're paying assistant coaches well over $1 million. Man, in my opinion, that changed it all. And now it's just the players getting a tiny little bit of, because it's just so, when you look at it, it's just so inequitable. Like, okay, every time Florida State won 10 games, Jimbo Fisher would get an extra $200,000 or $300,000 as an incentive. Meanwhile, Dalvin Cook's like, all right, man, hey, go get some more steak in the nutrition room. Like it's just so inequitable that I'm okay with it now. I'm not excited for it, but I understand it. And coaches certainly can't complain. There better not be a peep out of Dabo's mouth about his players getting money when my man's making $10 million a year. Not a peep.
Well, think about old Charles Kelly, getting an $825,000 a year contract, and DeMarcus Walker and Jalen Ramsey and Derwin, just getting a second plate of honey fried chicken at the fair.
Yeah, exactly. Man, and it really didn't used to be like when I was growing up, like I just watched the 93 game, but if we go back to like the mid 80s, there wasn't that big a difference between the money that a college football coach got paid and the money that a high school football coach got paid. I would say Bobby Bowden in the mid 80s probably made 3 times what a normal high school football coach at a good program like Valdosta. Maybe at Valdosta he made twice as much or 3 times as much as Wright Bazemore at Valdosta High School. Well, now Mike Norvell makes 30 times the money as a Valdosta High School football coach. Mike Norvell's not even highly paid, mind you. It's just gotten so out of control. It's not even the sport that we remember from growing up. The money is just off the charts, and it's changed everything. And now it just seems to be a little icky that these guys are driving around what they drive around. My man's getting $16 million to not coach. Jimbo got $75 million to go coach football. these guys, if they want to go put their picture on a billboard and get $25,000 for it, all right, that's fine. It's not going to ruin the sport any more than Jimbo getting $75 million ruined the sport.
I don't want to go too far into this. What if they didn't double dip? What if it was, if you're going to accept outside money, then you need to pay back your tuition? Like, well, obviously we can't be like, all right, you're on your own now if you're going to take endorsement money, because you still have to worry about apparel, equipment, food, lodging, all that stuff's kind of rolled into your scholarship. But if it was like, all right, you can profit off your name, image, and likeness, but if you go that route, you have to reimburse the university the cost of tuition.
But why? It's not like Florida State's losing money from the ad, right? It's not like
Well, it's to keep the
David
integrity.
Coburn. It's not keeping David Coburn from getting that money.
Well, right, but to keep some, it's to Garnett's 76th thing about we don't want to ruin the sport. I think I think for the consumer that would make them. It's like Goodell and all these rich executives deciding not to take their salary during the pandemic and the economic downturn. It's like, all right, well, that's a nice of you to step up or whatever. We can kind of feel a little bit comforted that you're not gonna totally be killing it here. It's like, all right, yeah, man, we don't want you to be a starving. Nobody wants these kids to be starving, broke, struggling students. But at the same time, like, we feel a little bit greasy if it's like, man, this kid's literally clearing like 6 figures this year on top of everything that he's getting. Like, he's making more money than 85% of the households in the state he's playing in, and he's 19. He can't even get past ENC 1102. Somebody's been helping him pass his tests. I don't know. I think like if
but he scores a bunch of touchdowns for us.
That's
the counter to that. But yeah, I mean, like Gene said in the videos, like there's these guys, it's $150,000 or $200,000 scholarship, which is fine. But we know how some of these football factories are, man. It's not there. There's not a lot of importance stressed on. Hey, we're preparing you for the real world where you can go get a great job with this education. A lot of these football factories we're trying to keep you eligible so you can win games for us. That's all it is. They're not really getting set up for their next level, and this might be the only chance for a lot of these players to make any type of money like this. And again, if it's not taken away from the university, and I'm of the opinion that as soon as a guy's making $10 million to coach amateurs, to coach quote-unquote amateurs, that to me should make everyone feel icky.
Well, can't you say that Florida State affords you the marketability? It gives you that profile to be able to profit off your name, image, and likeness?
I mean, yeah, but, I guess, but...
So shouldn't they get a cut of it? And to my point is, like, if you're going to get
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. No, they're making... Florida State, Florida State's maybe not the best example because they're not flush with cash these days, but Alabama's making a ton of money. You're telling me you think if like Tua went and got a nationwide deal that he owes Alabama something? Like Tua went there. Tua won so many games for him.
His marketing agent's going to get like 7% of that. Why shouldn't Tua pay at least his tuition? Tua's going to get everything else to help him be a successful football player to make him a marketable person.
Well, I think. I got back to the original point. Yeah, you're right. There is that none of these. 1% of these guys is going to make enough money to pay off their tuition. Maybe 3%.
But I think that would be comforting to a lot of fans and know that's happening.
Yeah, but what about the guy that's just on the local Ford dealership that's getting $8,000 for it or $15,000? That's not paying for his room, board, and food and nutrition and classes. It's just not.
Well, then you're not popular if you shouldn't do it. There's a cost.
No, man. Let him. Come on. These guys are making. You got assistant coaches making $2 million. Assistant coaches.
One last question and a 5-paragraph dissertation. Random_John. Good morning, Aslan and Corey. If a player can profit from their likeness, does that mean this is no longer an amateur sport? All the players still students first, or do they have to live up to a professional standard for the brands they represent? With all the changes happening to college sports, do you feel the amateur tag will be dropped within the next 5 years and we'll call them athlete students instead of student athletes? Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing about the NCAA this whole time about paying players is maintaining this amateurism standard or title or moniker, whatever you want to call it. And if you're going to get paid for what you're doing, you're not an amateur. You're a professional. That's what separates us from people that are in their parents'
But
basement.
you're not getting paid for what you're doing. I mean, they're not getting paid specifically to go play. It's not like they get a paycheck
for their
each
likeness.
game they play.
It's for who they are. Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're known because they play basketball or football. But by the way, Trent Forrest with like a tree cutting service.
Okay, there we go.
There's one. There's one right there, baby. There's one right there. That's
He's
all
already
I'm saying.
gone. He's already gone.
I
Corey.
know. So I come up with the ones that I can't use. Oh man, that's too bad. So yeah, no. Look, yes, it does, and it's.
Well, how about hey, Dr. Heather Birch with Chubba Purdy, get you a Purdy smile, Birch Orthodontics.
That's too close to Purdy Mouth.
Okay.
And Purdy Mouth is from Deliverance.
You're right.
And we don't need to make that. So nobody's going to want to make that association with one of their football players. But I see what you're saying. Hey, Dr. Birch, we're in with you too now. You need to start coming up with some ideas and brainstorm. We can do some things. An orthodontist. Good grief, they could have a field day. So look, man, it's going to be it's going to be different. It's going to be different than what we're accustomed to. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad for the sport. I don't think it's necessarily an evil thing for the top 5% of college football players to make some money on their endorsements, but I understand that it's a slippery slope and it's a can of worms. Again, I just think the bigger can of worms is these incredible coaching salaries. These guys are getting paid more than NFL coaches, a lot more. And when that happened is when the amateurism shifted. Like, why would we allow the guys that coach to become millionaires and billionaires? Probably not billionaires, but Nick Saban's made over $150 million at Alabama probably. Why would we allow him to do that? But then if the player, we don't pay Nick Saban. His incentive isn't he doesn't get to go to get a free class if he wants. He gets actual money and cash. He doesn't go, hey, Nick, hey, all right, man. We're gonna let you take econ for free. No, we're gonna give you a lot of money, Nick, because we value what you do. Well, these guys have value too, and it's such a popular sport now. It's probably the second most popular sport in the country behind NFL, and these coaches are making exorbitant sums of money, and it's just, I think it's okay. I think we'll survive this if we survive that.
I just realized Saban owns like 3 or 4 Mercedes dealerships. That's what I mean.
Oh, does he really?
Yeah.
Booyah! That's it. Oh, by the way, so I was watching an old Bobby Bowden show. This was this might have been like 86 or 87.
Like Golden Flake potato chips and stuff.
But how about that? Yellowwood? Is that still around?
Yeah, Yellowwood's still around. Yeah, that guy's like one of the richest people in Alabama.
Or Golden Flakes, instead of getting these coaches to do it, now you get a player to do it. But Bobby Bowden was doing a Hardee's commercial where he's in the drive-through, and I'm almost positive the other people in the car are football players, are his football players. And he's like, hey, we want a big Coke and a big Buford and a big this and a big that, and then we get all that. And it's Bobby Bowden talking, and I'm pretty sure the other guys in the car are football players. Yeah. So hey, those guys didn't get paid then, but they could have gotten $100 from Hardee's back then. That would have been all right.
Real quick, and then I'll read this last one. I think you might have touched on it earlier in the show, hour number 1, now as we approach hour number 2. I think you talked about you fear these players may be treating these things like bowl games, sitting things out. I don't know if you meant that in terms of once they kind of get their marketing dollars, but Random John asked, are these players, are they still students first, or do they have to live up to a professional standard for the brands they represent? Let me kind of spin it this way. I mean, if you are a guy like
that's a really good question, by the way, right?
Yeah,
that's one thing that hadn't even occurred to me. But yeah, there are going to be some guys losing sponsorships for a tweet here and there.
Right, but if you do have the money, you get paid your marketing deal or whatever, and your team is, and again, this is only, and you're totally right about this. It's only going to affect like 5 players per team, really. Like, we're not thinking that it's going to be a huge economic boon to the entire team. But like those 1 or 2 guys at the top of the 5, like your quarterback, your Heisman candidate guy that gets that marketing deal for 6 figures, and say that actually maybe you won't be a Heisman candidate if you have 2 losses. But like if you get that money, I mean, how invested are you into the latter part of a season and like why should I risk injury, man? Like, I already got the money. I'm going to, I got the NFL coming up in a little bit. I wonder if, like, that's going to be maybe the sort of unintended consequence. But.
Is what, like you, I still think they're going to want to, if they're playing for something, they're still going to want to win. And they don't want to do something like that necessarily. Like, what are they going to tell a guy at the combine when they ask, hey, why didn't you play the last 3 games of your season? Well, I already had my money. Yeah. That's not really a great look for a team that's about to invest millions of dollars in you. They're not going to want to hear that, and they're really not going to want to see that. It's one thing to miss 1 game, but to sit out 3 or 4 games and then tell the people when they ask you why you did it, and heaven knows these NFL teams ask the most ridiculous questions in the world to these prospects, but that would be a really legitimate one. Like, hey, man, why did you sit out? Your team was 8-1, and you were in the Heisman race. And you say, oh, well, I already had a $500,000 deal with Gatorade. It's like, oh,
you're the worst. You're the worst at picking random sponsors. Like, why would you say Gatorade? Why
I don't know. Powerade.
Come on.
Is that better?
Better.
Sorry, guys. Powerade. Hey, who knows, man? I've said Corey Mangum in this show. I've ripped Akeem Dent because he drops interceptions.
It's been a long one. It's been a
long show. I can't even remember where I was going with that. I'm sure it was going to be something profound and poignant. Yeah, but I completely lost my train of thought.
Yeah, players aren't going to sit out a bunch of games to ruin their NFL stock. You're right. Okay, that was a bad idea.
Yeah, for those guys, you know what I mean. For the Tua. Tua's not going to, and Dalvin wouldn't have. I don't think Dalvin would have done that for a bunch of games. He might have sat out the Orange Bowl because he. But again,
people are already doing it. Would be like,
players he's already had money. Yeah, but he also already had money, so maybe that's part of it too. Like, I already got 100 in the bank. I'll go ahead and play these Wolverines. What's the worst that can happen? But yeah, no, I don't think it'll have much impact in that regard. I think there'll be some impact for sure, and there'll be some unintended consequences we can't even foresee right now. But it's going to be fun, Aslan. It's going to be fun. It's going to be those commercials, man. I'm looking forward to Norvell pulling up to a Hardee's with 5 linemen in the back.
Why would he do a Hardee's? He would do Zaxby's. Golly, we're leaving you with this, everybody. Benzos on Saturday. Wake up, boys. I just wanted to share my thoughts with regards to the one-time transfer rule and athletes being compensated for their likeness. Last week, Corey indirectly reminded me of the parable of the broken window. Or is it parable?
Parable. You got it right. Yeah.
In economics, there is this idea dealing with the opportunity cost and the law of unintended consequences, but a basic example is that a kid breaks a shop window and runs off. Shop owner buys a new window. The economy keeps moving. Yay. Only problem is that window money was for the owner's new suit, and now the tailor is losing money. I think some people are forgetting about the tailors of college football. The 90% of kids that do not play for LSU and Alabama or are named Jalen Hurts. These kids shouldn't need a waiver. They bust their butts to be good enough to play FBS football. Let them have choices after every successful semester. Talented kid leaves the program? Fine. Next up. Maybe that backup was a star waiting to happen. Maybe a small school kid realized after his freshman year he can play at FSU. That's how opportunity works. It also works the other way. Maybe a kid is a UGA guy and realizes he will never play and goes to Tulsa to ball out. Do you really think a kid that leaves every semester will be a star? Doubt it. A lot of transfers don't make it anyway. Let the market determine who the winners are. I understand the concerns of consistently powerful teams in college football, but don't we have that now? The NCAA can create a window for legal tampering like pro sports or put a cap on accepting transfers. There are ways to balance it out. I have a lot more to say, but it's already a long post. Adios, guys.
So what I would say to that, and look, man, I'm all for the people. I think you should be able to definitely transfer without penalty if your coach leaves. Like we talked about on the video, we brought it up a little bit. These scholarships are only 1 year renewable. Make them 2 or 4 year renewable. Make it a real contract, and then I think you have more of a leg to stand on if you're the NCAA or a school and say, no, I'm not going to let you just willy-nilly transfer. That's a 2 year contract or that's a 4 year contract you sign. But if there was just one time, you could transfer anywhere one time without penalty and play right away. A person made, and I can't remember who it was, made this point on the message boards. Alabama would never have to recruit high school football again. Never. Literally, Alabama could go to, what would you say, Aslan? There's 120 FBS schools. Alabama could go to 115 of them and say, hey, we want you, you, and you. We like the Jamar Chase. Hey, come play for Alabama. Or Tamari and Terry, Marvin Wilson. Come play for Alabama where you can win a national title. They don't have to even develop kids anymore. They could literally just every year go get the best juniors to be in that entire class. Go look at the first mock draft that McShay drops in May and say, those are the 25 guys we're going after. And 22 of them could, even 17 of them could come if there's no penalty. And I just don't think that's great for the sport. I just don't. As an old dude, I'm not saying it's not fair. I know Jimbo bounced. Maybe Jimbo shouldn't be allowed to bounce with no penalty. Literally didn't pay anything, not even a buyout. I get it. And I'm just talking about how unfair it is that these coaches make all this money. Now I'm saying it is fair that they get to leave whenever they want, but the players don't. I just think that would be, I don't even think we could, I don't know what college football would look like then. You're literally having to recruit kids every semester to stay there. So what's the point of even do you have a national signing day every year for when you retain a freshman and he goes into his sophomore year? Does he have some hats at the podium or in his dorm room? It says, I'm staying with Florida State. Hey, he could do that at Zaxby's and get paid for it too. Maybe there's a lot of synergy here in all these. Yeah, I cringe at that. I cringe at Alabama and LSU and Georgia and even Florida State. Like Florida State would eat pretty early on in that scenario. Just hand-picking all these players from around the country.
Well said. I have nothing of substance to add.
How long have we been going?
It's your standard 1 hour, 26-minute show.
Oh, boy. Are we in May yet?
We are.
All right. We did it. We made it, guys.
All right, folks. Thanks, as always, for listening. He's Corey Maslon. It's been Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's Indescribably Good. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Some call them lunchtime lifesavers. Others call them the most perfect sandwiches to ever exist. At Zaxby's, we just call them our signature fan favorites. The Southern TLC Filet Sandwich has hand-breaded chicken with fresh tomato and crisp lettuce. The famous Kickin' Chicken Sandwich features spicy tongue torch and Cool Ranch sauces. And for a limited time, fried pickles are back. 2 classic sandwiches and a legendary appetizer. 3 more reasons you're gonna get a kick out of Zaxby's.